Plastic
Plastic
Yeah.
climate
climate
future
future
dot com.
com.
Oh yeah.
Boom. All right. We did it. We
Yeah.
did it.
So
Akshay, welcome.
Yes.
welcome.
Did we
Thanks.
sing
Thanks
again?
for being with us. Yeah, we just actually you're only invited to the podcast today because we want to be famous with this jingle now in India.
Yes, yes.
No, but we're
I
happy
hope
that
they
you
will let
stayed
us into
on.
the country now.
Right.
And we're
Yes.
happy that you stayed on. You didn't disappear. So it means our jingle is not that bad. And thanks for being with us tonight.
Yes.
Um,
Hmm.
Tell us, Akshay, where are you tuning in from, and what is your company?
Yes, so
Yeah.
it's a great opportunity to be on this platform with two gentlemen so much passionate about plastic and climate action. And again, we don't have songs as such in plastic pollution, so probably you can create a rapping song on this to create awareness. So currently, I'm just next to a beautiful beach, one of the clean beach, which is under the blue flag certification, one of the cleanest beach in
Hmm.
Kerala called Kapad Beach.
Wow.
And this is the place where Vasco da Gama has come to India for the first time, and that's how the trade started to the Europe or the Portugal, right? So that's the
Ah.
significant place. So again, coming to my company, I'm one of the co-founders of Greenworms, and like a worm, our philosophy is how we can generate less waste and also do something good things like worm, right? So that was the whole
Hmm.
philosophy, and
Hmm.
good to be here and super excited to see what we can discuss today.
That's excellent. That's excellent. I mean, I've heard of greenworms from speaking with Matt over recent weeks, and also some of our earlier podcast guests have referred to you. So you have something of a reputation that's really seems to be rather highly regarded. Your company, what you're doing, but Akshay, before we get into the company, we're always curious about uh, who the person is that we're talking to, and kind of the question of why are you doing what you're doing?
Right.
How did you get to where you are, and why are you doing?
Yes, I think why we are doing is there are a lot of things which we thought they are impossible, and we are here to do impossible possible every day. So, to just give a quick intro, I think myself an entrepreneur, so much obsessed with doing something with impact. But in this fast moving world, I started with I just quit my college because I feel entrepreneurship would be the way of creating uh, opportunities by solving the problems and creating jobs. That was something that I felt like, the entrepreneurship is a way forward rather than getting in a conventional way. And so I have run multiple ventures, and I was traveling across, burning my hands, figuring out my niche, what is my ultimate purpose. Of course, entrepreneurship is a way pathward. And when I seen, I've been like a lot of plastic pollution, a lot of climate change, all these issues, and at the grassroots level, it's very vulnerable. So I thought, like, okay, now the funnel is like sustainability. How do we essentially do that? So can we, because we are talking about climate changes as a lifetime crisis, and how do we address this? So then I started a more like open innovation consulting firm on how we can bring all the stakeholders together to do something. And that's where I started like engaging with the local governments, engaging with the government bureaucrats, various stakeholders in the value chain to bring, and again engaging the students and youth to find solutions. So this could be some hackathons or a high level problem statements and building out certain things, and then testing with the access to the governments. And that's where Greenworms has got as one of the partner. So the founder who been like mentor to these programs, and one day fine day we were doing with a one of the government event, and after that we sat in a beach, it's a sunset, and next day we have to go back. to our homes. So then we realized is I want to do something, but things were not materializing. And Jabir, who started Greenworms, want to scale this. So for me, I have experience in engaging with the brands, looking at open innovation, also looking at more like a scale. And he started something. So we thought, okay, how we can club like a marriage, how we can do a partnership where we can do something. And no looking back, I think before we left to our hotels in the night, we realized, okay, can we do something? So then we thought like, okay, and that was also my realization that you have to be on the ground, right? Again, when you are into corporate consulting, it's a good money, and you have access to some of the best people, but the impact was less. So I thought like, can we do something on ground? And I realized if you want to do something, you need to spend at least a decade or 2 decades, because you are talking about not like building a tool or a software, you are talking about systematic change. So that's where been my journey. Then it was more like hiring, and then becoming the co-founder based on the performance and all. And so this year I became the co-founder officially. So for me also, I took, okay, this is a challenge, this worth taking, working on the ground and see what you can do, how you can build the partnerships, drive certain things which I'm good at, sales, marketing and communications. And then after 3 years of building trust, delivering certain things, I came on board and a full time co-founder. And also like it became a funnel now, from sustainability, entrepreneurship, sustainability, now waste management at the grassroots, creating jobs. So that was the whole journey of finding your funnel, your larger purpose. So now I am at a phase where it's a lifetime mission, because we realize we create a lot of jobs and you can create thousands. So then it become a lifetime mission. So for me, my life has been so far last 30 years, because I just turned 30 last year. So it's been more on finding that core purpose. Yeah.
Mhm. Wow. And now, in a nutshell, so what is actually Greenworms doing?
Right.
Because I think you've brought now this big picture, and now like what
Right.
is condensing to this
Right.
lifetime vision
So
that you have now?
right. So Greenworms, our focus is we have two objectives: how we can tackle waste crisis and poverty. Right. So we're working in rural areas, coastal areas, and islands where there is limited resource and infrastructure, and there is a lot of unemployment. So what we thought is working in locations where there are challenges, and how we can able to put a plan. Like for example, our theory of change was, if you are able to put people throughout the year do the same thing, that becomes a process, and that process is continuous, it becomes systematic change. So waste crisis is not like a one time or overnight success. You need to fundamentally disrupt the whole system, put the people accountability at different levels, like a typical corporate or a structure. So that was what we were doing. And we realized in this due course, the women who we are engaging are compassionate about this thing, and they want long term employment. So that's where we thought, okay, now we know that we can create jobs, and these are for the women, and these women in the rural areas have very limited opportunities. So can we do something? Then that's how the women started working full time. And then as we exploring more, we realized, apart say providing safety, what other things is dignity, because there's a lot of taboo around, like waste management is a dirty job, and untouchables and all. So can we bring that dignity, and also talk about minimum wages? So when we started, we were talking about minimum wages. Now we have set a benchmark for ourselves how we can do a fair wages. So what we do was, essentially we work with the local governments, engage the local women or existing workforce to transform them into wastepreneurs. And second is, at our facility, we start building our own infrastructure, which is a game changing pivot we did. And at the infrastructure, there are a lot of sorting jobs are done by the women. And then we need, so when you scale, you need administrative team. So now we got youth who just completed their degree or graduation or masters. And so we have 110 youth with our white collar jobs. So in a nutshell, we are working in 120 villages, 3 towns and 2 cities, roughly 1 million households. So we are engaging 2,600 women wastepreneurs, 350 direct jobs of women who sorted out facility, and 110 white collar jobs. These are again from the local youth. But it's all possible because we also integrated the community in our operations. So we put community at the center of operations, building trust. It's just not telling them to, cooperate, how we provide continuous waste management services, how we can tell that there is a possibilities. Beyond that, the women were from the local community, the youth were from the local community. So there is a lot of people, now these villages see these people as heroes or sheroes and recognize, because in the rural areas they have very limited land, they have very limited budget resources, and they all are very much connected to the nature. They have farming areas and or seas, different. So they want to protect it, because unlike city there is no ownership, right? All are migrants, but in this villages it's their, they throughout the life they live there and they want it to be clean. And where we are working as a collaboratively to do that. So I think, in nutshell, I know there is so much to talk, but you need to put somewhere. So this is my intro of Greenworms.
So if I summarize, so basically you're solving the waste problem by creating a value for the waste, and then a value chain which is being beneficial for the rural communities in terms of not only environmental reasons but also creating jobs, right? And when you talk about waste, what type of waste is it, and how does the value chain then looks like? What are you actually doing, and what are the
Right.
women then doing?
Right. So when you look at this rural economies, like in India or global south, it's mostly low income communities. So, and it's there, the economics are like more like sachet economics. So majority of the waste we collect is, the 100% is non-biodegradable waste. So it's not the food waste, because the rural communities have their own practices like composting and all this. So we focus on waste that is non-biodegradable, and they don't know what to do with this waste. So majority, nearly 60 to 60%, 65% of our waste is single-use plastics, such as carry bags, multi-layer plastics, mono-layer plastics, and these are all single-use. So like even if you go to a local store, because people can't afford to buy a big shampoo bottle which comes in HDPE, so they buy all in small sachets. Again, essentially they buy for a 2 days or a week time. The milk, or again, the oils, the all the, again, India, it's not just bread, right? India, we have bunch of varieties of food. So all ingredients are comes in small sachets. So that was the major waste. Again, only 20% of is high value waste. Like, we get uh, PET, HDP, rigid plastics, PET, PVC, and all. So basically, we are working in a value chain where no one is collecting this waste, which is very has low economical value. So what we do was we collaborate with the local village, and we either integrate the existing waste reclaimers, or engage the local community women from each ward or a street to join. So each team, each village has roughly 20 to 50 members, depends on the size of the village, and they collect the waste. And so we do a lot of community action, because we have almost uh, 1 or 2 persons for a village or a village cluster. So we do a lot of community awareness to bring that behavioral change. And once the waste is collected on the same day, our team visit the facility, to the village, and collect those uh, waste and bring it to our material recovery facility. And here we have like conveyors, balers, shredders, and we have a professional workforce. Majority of them would be women, and they do this. So we are sorting in 20 to 25 categories, because now we are sorting films into film grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. Like pet also we sort in 3 4. So it was like sorting for circularity, means the more you sort, you can have a high recycling rate, you can have high value addition in terms of costing the recyclers can pay. And so what we are doing now was, majority of waste we are sending it to co-processing in the cement kilns, which doesn't have any economical value or currently non-recyclable. But certain waste which is multi-layer plastics, we are sending to pyrolysis, we are sending to chemical recyclers, to kind of test and see how they can use the feedstock. So rest remaining right now we are sending to recyclers or brands who associate with us, and we send to their recycling partners. But the good news is the long awaited our recycling unit, which recycles the film and rigid, will be operational commercially from April this year. So where we are trying to make film to film. And again, why we entered into recycling is we don't want to wait for like industry will transform or government will bring something, because we are sending our recycled materials to long distances. So what we thought was, the brands, a lot of brands, like again, long ago one of the footwear brand has reached out to us during COVID and said, I want pet flakes, I want to use in their value chain. And they kind of asked us, can you set up a pet recycling unit? But I can't afford. So a lot of brands have reached out to us because they want the quality of the mechanically recycled products. So they said, you meet the compliances, you have a great story, you have a secured value chain from the collection in terms of scalability. So can you do this? That's where we realized that, a lot of brands want to make a transition, but they don't get access to the proper raw material. So can we do something? So that's where we started, and this recycling unit will make granules. Not just that, but we'll do film to film recycling. That means we can make again the film for the industrial use cases. Maybe we are starting with the non-food grade use cases, where plastic can't be replaced, like packaging, courier, for security reasons, to protect certain machineries or something. So we are trying to make films, poly bags with 80 or 100% recycled, and our value chain is completely post consumer. So what we realized is now we get an opportunity to work with global brands to do that local action. So we use the word called local. So what it means is you do global partnerships for local action, and these products are global value chain products. So that was the whole. And so currently have one partnership that go ongoing with IKEA. So for example, it's not particular in plastic, but the glass bottles, we are doing a pilot with them for how they can use that in their value chain in India and globally. So for the plastics, once we have a recycling unit, we'll be able to provide brands with a feedstock. Either their manufacturer can use the granules to make end products, or end products like films, poly bags, or for envelopes and courier bags, we can able to do that. So that gives the whole value chain. Yeah.
Wow, I mean, just so much stuff there. I could be chewing on that for 30 minutes. What all the content that you've provided there, Akshay. It's really interesting. A question, something you said earlier on. You mentioned that at the beginning of, let's say, the waste, you have a separation of, well, you mentioned non biodegradable waste is not included in the collection, and you said something about, I think, 65% of the non-biodegradable waste that you collect is single-use plastic. If I understand, you mentioned carrier bags, sachets, and so on. And you mentioned, as far as what these materials are these single-use materials are ultimately used for. They go into, you mentioned kilns, I believe, and you mentioned pyrolysis for chemical recycling. Can you talk a little bit more about what it is that the single-use plastic that you're collecting where it goes to as far as once it's collected, it's sorted, and then it's processed for its next life, let's say.
Right. So, in terms of single-use plastic, we try to sort because we have a beautiful workforce and they can able to sort in whatever forms. But when you sort, you are not meeting the economical value, right? In the business, unit economics are very important. So, what we have is we are getting, because we are only collecting this only mixed dry waste separately, non-biodegradable. It's not contaminated food, so it can be sorted. So what we are doing is certain portions like multi-layer plastics we are sorting, and there are a few recyclers which are testing this recycling material to make into mechanical or chemical like pyrolysis. So we are supplying the feedstock because for them it's a multiple roles, and the chemical recycling was very early stage in India. But if you have a right feedstock, the chemical recycling can have a scale, right? Because mechanical recycling has constraint when it comes to removing of aluminum layer or monolayers, and the majority of our waste currently is going to the cement kilns in India. It's kind of certified and processed by the Central Pollution Control Board, where a lot of cement kilns use coal in burning, right? And what they are trying to do was the massive amount of plastic waste or which is currently non-recyclable will be sent there. So they don't so for example, they kind of use 70% of the coal and 30% of this materials, which is called as alternative raw material fuel, and they're using this. So this way, currently we don't have a commercial scale solution in terms of mass commercial scale recycling. We are able to divert the usage of coal by 30 or 50%, so which is a good sign to start with. But in our case, what we are trying to do was we realized that the multi-layer plastics, if sorted, can be recycled, and the single-use carry bags or the milk pouches, right? So the milk pouches, oil pouches, which is made of LDPE film, but it's contaminated. So now we are sorting those to work with recyclers who work on these specific materials. So we are trying to build that value chains for each, so that essentially in next 2 or 3 years, when commercial recycling technology has come to India, they need some exact feedstock. So we would be the essentially good partner for them to do a joint venture and get that assured feedstock. Because in chemical recycling, it's very robust, but you can't feed every mixed waste, right? And only professional organizations like us can sort and issue that feedstock every day in volumes, let's say 10 ton or 100 ton per day. So we are looking at that scale to build that capacities to be prepared when there is a time for scale or setting up joint ventures. So by doing that, I think we can do a lot good for India, or helping these innovators or chemical recyclers to say you can get assured feedstock and also a viable business. So that's what we try to do in terms of long term, shifting from sending it to the co-processing, moving it to mechanical and chemical recycling, material by material.
And you just said it's gonna, of course, take some time until you build a value chain, until the commercial viability will be also, yeah, driving the whole business. So for now, how did you finance all this, and how did you, on one hand, finance first of all the whole business development, but also setting up this recycling plant or sorting plant? I mean, that's not just like a couple of hundred thousands. Probably it's just needs some investment.
Right. So what we realized is there are two things. One, you want to be a evolutionary or revolutionary. So evolutionary means kind of like when the industry adopts, then there are unit economics. When something seen is working, you adopt, and it's a slow path, and it's subjected to regrets, or again, either you try or wait till the industry succeed. Second is how you can be revolutionary, how you can disrupt that ecosystem. In traditionally, the waste management has been collecting the user fee and just dumping, right? Dumping on the landfills or dump sites and open burning and fetch positive value waste. So what we thought was, okay, currently the business model is not like a one or primary or secondary revenue sources. You can still build a lot of revenue sources, which can be in the form of performance based financing, like plastic credits as a mechanism, or uh, you know uh, mechanism where you do lot of sorting, which has a cost, but you can able to work with certain recyclers where they get exclusive materials. Third is how brands can able to source recycled content that comes with the compliance, traceability, and the impact story. So that was, we were able to build that value chain. And second is, since this sector doesn't have a high margins, we thought creating jobs can give a long returns. For example, we started building our infrastructure. Earlier we are telling that government has to provide infrastructure, so we invested in infrastructure. Now we are able to scale to 30-40 villages. Our facilities are like 30-50 ton per day. So this, if we waited for someone to give infrastructure, we don't do. And second, we raised our funding. We bought impact investors like Upaya Social Ventures, Small Scale Sustainable Infrastructure Development Fund. These are US based impact investors who who are part of our first round of funding. And now we are raising our equity investment, where institutional investors are coming. So where it's not about valuation, but they back companies with the high impact. So we are the one. And third is, we are working on footwear, because we realize that 5% of a footwear, again, it is a mix of plastics like rubber, pu, pvc and all. So right now we are setting up a footwear recycling unit, no, footwear recovery unit followed by recycling unit, to see how we can build a value chain around the footwear waste, collaborating with the brands and bringing the technology. And textile, because now the textile is almost like a plastic waste, right? It's also a crisis now. So now we are set up a textile recovery facility, because we realize 8% of our textile, no, our incoming waste is textile waste. And earlier it's going as rejects because it's contaminated. Now using our households, we are collecting textile waste every quarter. Now we have a textile recovery facility which manages roughly 100 to 200 tons per month. And we are sorting, we are selling second hand clothes like rewearable clothing. Then we are doing upcycling. Then we are channelizing to upcyclers or large scale manufacturers who use this fabrics again. Then we are sending it to recyclers. And only 20% of textile waste is going as reject to co-processing. So that means, so we are trying to build that, disrupting material by sector, material by material. And again, the textile also, you need chemical recycling, right? I think John might be aware of, because the post consumer textile waste is mix of a lot of like polycotton, synthetic, all this. So it's very difficult to identify. And so what we are trying to do is build the capacities. And now we are sending samples to various textile chemical recyclers to see if they can do this. Because when you see India, the cities or global cities, most of that are like high value, like denim, only cotton material. If you come to the rural, it's all how the people try to buy something that has affordability, right? Something that they can afford. And these are at low cost, and these materials are mixed fibers. So these materials would end up, because it doesn't have economic value or recycling rate. So we are trying to build that value chain. And now we also started initiative to collect diapers and sanitary pads separately, so that we can figure out this solution. So right now we didn't get something economically viable, but we are doing effort. So it means we want to be a revolutionary, we want to experiment, we want to raise funds, we want to build new financing mechanisms. So we are trying to engage with the brands to say how you can invest in us, and in return you can get assured feedstock. The brands are finding challenge, because they have a corporate governance. If they want to work with a vendor, they need to have a bunch of compliances, traceability. This informal sector has challenge, so we are trying to build that, and brands can have a strategic opportunity. We get the required fund or infrastructure. In return, we pay back raw material, which brands are also happy. So we are trying to revolutionize. Of course, we burn the hands, and it's a long game, and we are trying to do that. And there are only few people which are doing that, and glad that we made a choice and no regrets.
Oh, you mentioned brands a little bit earlier, and Matt was asking about how are you getting paid, let's say. Um, and I was looking on your website recently, and I see that you offer EPR compliance to brands, and I see you have some really prominent brands that are already a part of your partnerships. Is this part of your business also a good revenue source? The offering of the EPR compliance that is, as I understand, is required by law in India, that the brands need to have show that they are in compliance with EPR.
Yes, luckily, I think India has taken this decision in 2018, and I think that since then, I think it given some source of revenue stream for the waste management companies and recyclers, which can build capacities. And second extent is the amount of waste that is being diverted through the EPR is massive. So in EPR terms, the extended producer responsibility brand has this, what amount of plastic they used in packaging needs to be managed, and that means the brands has to work with waste management companies and recyclers to essentially build these capacities to do the reverse logistics. I think this was a great step that India has taken. And second is, this is a great revenue source. And now brands also aware of how much plastic they are using, and there is more cost when it is non-recycled waste. So now brands has to pay to the waste management companies. Of course, over last 4 to 5 years the brands are paying, but they are also been said become a liability. There is a cost. So brands also started thinking on how I can reduce the plastic content, how I can shift from non-recyclable to, you know, recyclable material. Can I reduce the plastic strategically in a way which can, have more material uh, storage, like, so the EPR law also been like progressive. It's not just about recovery. I think starting next year, brands also need to use recycled content in their packaging. So that means the recycling plastic will have more value. Of course, there are certain challenges like traceability, the brands taking this as a liability. But there's only also an online portal where the brands has to submit these documents in the form of credits to the pollution control board, and it is kind of an automated system where they monitor and review. So when 2018 there are only handful of brands, now there are like hundreds of brands which are doing this EPR. And also brands also saying that since it's a liability, let me reduce my plastic footprint. So which also done. But again, in India is it's a massive country, and monetary is very difficult at a scale. So it takes time. I think a lot of waste management companies were able to leverage this as an opportunity to work with. So we are working with quite handful of large brands, and now with our new recycling unit, I think we can able to help them to meet the EPR as well as their circularity goals of shifting to use of recycled content. So again, for India, it's a big country, so it's a very challenging to implement at scale, and it decade needs like half a decade or a decade. So we are already halfway. So I think in 5 years, it can help recover a lot of waste.
And you mentioned the transparency, and this is something that is a big topic, of course, also in yeah, making sure that what you're in the end promising to the customer or to the consumer is also something that you actually do. So if you work now with international brands, you need to probably also somehow, yeah, guarantee the traceability through transparency measures, and help also brands like this communicate what they're doing in terms of EPR, but also in the end also guarantee for them that if they are investing into EPR schemes, that they have the credibility of a partner like Greenworms, knowing that yeah, the you're doing a good stuff in the end. um, so what are like your actions towards transparency, and how do you perceive also the interest or the demand from your customers towards this transparency and traceability solution?
Right, good question, Matt. I think this is an emerging sector, and we are at a path of transformation from shifting to linear to circular, right? So, in this whole, the transparency plays a key role, and also the traceability, right? And both are interconnected. So, for us, the advantage that we have was essentially on uh, we have this whole value chain of a lot of women workforce, and most of these people has bank accounts, and we have the traceability from source level because we are collecting the post consumer waste from the households. That means you know from which household, like which village and which MRF. So there is a little bit of digitization, the digital transformation has enabled us to kind of showcase that the whole value chain. And the third was there are certain non-negotiables as industry, like no child labor, like assure minimum wages, safety, insurance, and all. So we were able to have this in the value chain, which has given us some advantage strategically, right? But again, what happened? Like brands can bring in different traceability tools because uh, for us there are very few case studies. Of course, there are use cases, but proven case studies. So we want to build that case studies to the show to the global industry or the value chain that there are possibilities. Here are the models. So to that, building trust is very important. So of course, we have internal traceability tool, but uh, we suggest brand like okay when we starting work which traceability, what is your traceability parameter, can we brainstorm, can we bring in our teams, and can we have a roadmap for the traceability, can we have a roadmap for compliances. Second is do you have any tool, because a lot of brands want to use blockchain, they want to use existing client they are using, or they want to use some third party. So we say we are open for that, means we are willing to adopt to their needs. And third is we are open for any third party audit. So we say you bring any audit, it's a desktop audit or on ground audit, do that. In fact, we encourage brands to come down because most often the brands come from, they have a very limited knowledge on the ground, or either their corporate systems made that they have very limited information, right? And it's always when the brands or the brand owners or their sustainability team comes down, they see the impacts on the ground, and it also gives them enlightenment on what it takes to collect waste and do reverse logistics and make into new product. So we do a lot of engagement more on like what we can do now and what we can achieve in next few months or few years, and can we have a roadmap. And every quarter if they do audits, so when we start with a brand we do a baseline audit to say here is where we stand in terms of compliances, then we do it. I think it has a lot trust to do on there's a trust building between the brands and companies. Waste management companies or people work on the ground think brands or corporate they exploit, or they don't have trust. And second is the brands think that the ground doesn't have the traceability, transparency, and all. So you can only do it is building trust brick by brick, project by project, per ton by ton. And all this would also give, like for example, third party audits, quality, delivering on time, payments on time, so both wise, right? So we provide the quality material, the brands need to pay on time. So these all are a trust building exercise. And unfortunately, this doesn't happen earlier, because earlier we are using virgin plastic, virgin material, so it was more like a traditional businesses. But now it's a very unconventional way, so it needed trust. And I think we are doing it. I think the one factor that Greenworms is, we are a very young team, and we are willing to adopt. We are not want to constrain that this is only possible, this is not. We are willing to try and tell to the brands this is what we achieve. So that where, a lot of brands want some color pet bottles of green, which is really tough, or only transparent. So how brands also, when we start working on this whole journey of they coming down, seeing the scenarios, the brand is okay, if this is not working, can we shift, the material, or can we, compromise on certain things, but show that how we can do better. I think that was the whole journey of doing this. And there is no choice. Brand can give you a reference, but the trust building should happen with every brand.
Yeah, indeed. I was just curious, Akshay, uh, before Greenworms comes along, or even now that you are there in place, and I see on your website you have some really cool numbers. One is, so far you've basically dealt with about 40 kilotons of plastic waste, which is already a whole lot, a big start. And my question is, what either throughout the country of India or in your region, however you would slice it, how far do you have to go? What percentage of the households in India are having such a, let's say, developed partner in Greenworms, as far as taking, having the waste collectors, reclaimers, all this competence that you're putting in place. How much of the market, let's say, of waste is being tackled in this way, versus how much plastic waste today in India is still going to, if you will, end of lives that are not so favorable.
Right. If you see the Indian geography, right, I think nearly 60 or 60% is in rural areas, right? And these rural areas are mostly driven on agriculture economy, or, mostly low income communities, and few migrate to the cities, right? So here it's sachet economy going to play a key role, right? And because it's all about affordability, and, you know, how they can buy things for short term. So I think looking at a contest, that we should look at certain numbers, like for example, the existing waste management systems are mostly as per the Indian constitution or the system. It's mostly government driven waste management services, right? Again, India is enterprising country, entrepreneurship, corporates are, waving path, but the waste management need privatization. I think that was started a few years ago. And mostly the challenge was for the government to provide waste management. They have health, which is in the priority, electricity, safety, roads. So the most of the development is happening more on, because, you know we are talking about the second largest population at a scale, right? The growing population need better healthcare service and all. So the government is kind of privatizing this to bring in more entrepreneurs who work professionally to do that. So that's where we are on a pivotal shift. And when it comes to the material, I think we are still only like 30 to 40% of households have access to the waste management system at the last mile. So thing was how you can bring in the collection systems in first place. And second was the workforce is very vulnerable. So how you can bring them safety, ensure they get a minimum wages or fair wages. That means like, the most of the system is broken because the people don't get paid well or not able to make money out of these activities. That means the whole system gets broken. So you need to kind of build that workforce who get paid minimum wages or fairly wage throughout the year, and that's how you can able to build the process. So now once the waste is collected, how you can build the material recovery facilities. So again, this we are talking about infrastructure, which plays a key role in bringing the safety, doing value addition, like baling, shredding, and all this. So the second was building this infrastructure for sorting waste. Third was India. There are a lot of waste to energy plants that are coming up, and then there are chemical recycling, then there are mechanical recycling. So that forward linkaging should be established. So the three are the challenge. And fourth was how you can make your unit economics right. So unfortunately, this is more like a on enterprises which only think beyond collecting user fee and selling recyclable. Unless they innovate, they don't thrive in this, right? So in terms of risk taking like us, in terms of thinking beyond the box of from the unconventional way. So I think now the system is, instead of looking for solutions, every enterprise or every region should looking at what ways I can improve it better and what practices. So in our case, if you want to scale to 30 villages, we need to have a MRF built first, then collaborate with the villages to do that, right? So one of the biggest barrier for me is infrastructure. So I'm raising funds continuously to build this infrastructure. Third was we are innovating to see how these materials can be recycled or upcycled, downcycled, or used in terms of chemical recycling. So we were kind of not just running a business, but also doing R&D, doing joint collaboration to do that. So I think India is in a phase of transformation, but the rural is kind of ignored. So what we are looking at is we are working in 120 villages. So we are looking at scaling it to 500 villages. So currently we are doing 150 ton per day of waste with this workforce. Imagine
Yeah.
the amount of if you do for 50 or 1,000 villages. So you need a massive, it's like industrial clusters to be built. I think we see that as an opportunity, but still,
Mhm.
for us, a scale, in terms of growth comes with a cost. So, so we were
Mhm.
looking at, we took either a profit or growth. So we took growth, and so that's what, so we are just preparing ourselves how do we do at a scale. So we figured out our 0 to 1 in terms of collection, job creation, and 1 to 10
Mhm.
figured out on value addition. So now how do you scale from 120 villages to 1,000 villages in next decade or half a decade? So that's where 0 to 100, no, 10 to 100 is, we are trying to achieve. Matt, if you're not satisfied,
Yeah.
we can ask. I feel like I was kind of going here and there.
No, no, no. I think it's very good. Like because connected to this, I mean, you already said it before that you were talking about that you also have to educate in the end the brands or your customers. And I'm curious, how is like the perception of plastics and the problems with associated with plastic waste? How is it in India? Like from your perspective, or what would you get to know from the communities and so on, because of course you're someone who is, very much in the topic, who is active there. um, do you still have to advocate and evangelize a lot, or do people, when they see you and you present them what you want to do they say, yeah, that's a problem, we need to do something against it, we need to, we see this, we see plastics as part of our life, but we also see the problems that we have to deal, or do they rather say, you know what, we don't care, or something like this, or we don't really perceive this as a problem?
I think even we are a very good high impact business. You have to sell yourself in the industry. Brands, there are a few handful of brands which are really looking for impact, traceability, and compliances, right? So it's like now right, finding the right partner. So and in the ocean, right? So it's always you need to advocate for the industry, and it's a lot of community. You need to build that ecosystem. So when you're contributing to that ecosystem building of that whole value chain, you'll get your piece of cake. So that's what we are trying to do. We are actively promoting the industry ecosystem. For example, we are part of Indian Plastic Pact, which is a global pact network, and there is a lot of, we are part of working group on films. So essentially, brands, there are a couple of brands in India which want to see how they can make a transition, and there are recyclers and waste management companies. So we are doing audits. They are looking at design aspects, they are looking at unit economics aspects, they are looking at how consumers, because consumers are used to sachets or doing something very regular because the industry has not much disrupted. But now they are looking at whether there is acceptance rate with the customers, or do customers are willing to adjust to these new things. So I think there is a lot happening, but the problem is you need to build that value chain because it doesn't existing earlier. So we need to do that. And second was, I think, brands also, because the corporates have a 5 year 10 year roadmap, right? So we going just new entrant in the street, and pushing up. So I think brands also want to do some pilots to able to see whether it economically makes sense. And we also looking at, if we are doing this shift, what we are looking at only short term goals or primary consequences. We are not looking at what are the secondary consequences does this have, right? For example, we found a solution where you can use this very negative value plastic, mostly sachets, you can make into bricks. So there is solution existing, so which also helps me because a lot of low income communities can afford to into something, and you don't need to do for long distance transportation. But we don't know the impacts of microplastics, we don't know the what are the secondary consequences. So it's not happens overnight. So you need to hustle, and you need to pitch for brands, you need to showcase, you need to sell yourself. So that's what we were doing. There are things like, for example, once my recycling unit is done, we are looking at engaging the fashion brands, we are looking at brands which has non-food grade plastic, right? So it's a playground, you can play things. So once there are 3 or 4 brands replicated it, you have evolutionary brands. Okay, now they say, hey, there is some model that is working with XYZ brand, can we replicate? Because if you see, like, 78% of the consumers in UK, I think they want brands to take positive action. Again, with the subject to environment. And one thing that connects all of us commonly is plastic. Plastic is part of our life. So the brands are like looking at how they can win their customers or end their loyalty back again by making that transition, because there is a lot of uh, transformation that's need to be happen, and the customers will be driving force. So I think that we were looking at that next wave of, so transition to circularity would happen in next 1 2 decades. So Ian, even when we spoke to brands, they say we need to think. They want to take time, And when it comes to startups or entrepreneurs, they take decisions. But large brands, they have a board, they have their team, so you need the consents. So few brands says, I am willing to do this in principle, subjected to quality, subjected to affordability, subjected to. And so right now we were doing, so in next 2 years is about building trust, bringing that case study, say that this model works and these are the unit economics. So once it's done, you have more bunch of companies like us evolving, more brands saying that, do that. And I think again there is issue of greenwashing, but if you have a strong story, you have a high impact that is audited and high traceability, it's a wonderful story, right? We can always think of what body shop has done, right? So that we are here. So I think telling to the customers what we are doing now, why we are doing, and what constraints do we have also makes, because if you are being a transparent of what challenges do you have, customers are willing to accept it, right? I think that's where we need to differentiate between greenwashing and telling that performance driven marketing, which comes with story, which comes with data, which comes with audits, facts. So because if you look at the voluntary markets like plastic credits or strategic investments, because you can't technically donate, there are a lot of restrictions, legal laws, government laws. And second is, if this voluntary market of able to tell these stories, there is a cost associated to it. If you can bring that sales, your your marketing team is aligned, your sustainability team is aligned, your board is aligned. So I think now we need to tell the stories to earn back the trust of customers, because everyone was tired, everyone was frustrated. But can we do that to restore that trust by able to deep dive? When you say you are reducing your plastic, how, what is the theory behind that? When you say I'm using recycled content, what extent, where it come from, right? And when you say I'm creating jobs, where, which location, who are their profiles? Of course you can hide identification. When you say audited, which audited? So I think this, that's why if you see Davos, it's about rebuilding trust. Recent Davos summit was about rebuilding trust. I think the whole industry is going to do that, and we need chemical recyclers, we need make everyone, so it's a collective action. And everyone has to invest. I don't have money, but I'm fundraising, I'm investing in the infrastructure. So everyone has to chip in money, resources to build that, and it takes a decade or two. So we need to be prepared for that, and long term fruits, right? And so yes, I think um, we just need to stay positive and keep doing what we are doing to make impossible things possible every day.
Yeah. No, a
Excellent.
wonderful story. I think, as you mentioned, it's also about creating this powerful story that people
Mhm.
understand and that people can be inspired with. But it has to be credible in the end. So you need to have this trust that that makes this story in the end powerful. So yeah, I think there is so much more to talk to speak about with you, Akshay.
We'll have to do a part two.
Yeah, I think definitely we will have to do a, a part two. But before we let you go, we have one very last important question, and I give it to John.
Yes, indeed. This is we say this is the most important question of all. It's certainly one of the more interesting ones because we've been building up a playlist ever since we launched the podcast a little bit over 2 years ago now, and that is a playlist where we ask our guests to give us some tips on some of the music that they like. So I think you've received this question, Akshay,
Right,
and we would love to have a song or two that's kind of close to you. It can be just a song that you like. It can be something that's connected to your work or to the theme of what you're doing. But just give us something that we can post
right,
onto our playlist that we can remember,
right.
so that every
Yes,
time
yes,
we listen, we think of you. We think of Green Worms.
right. So I think we are talking about large. We're talking about impact in numbers and high, right? And
Mm.
so I watched this movie many times called The Greatest Showman. And here it goes around the circus team and the aspirations. So
Ah,
there is a song called A Million Dreams. So greenworms or
Wow.
millions of collectors have a dream, and
Yeah.
these are how we can keep oceans clean, how we can create jobs, and we need to do at a scale. Now we are doing it thousands, so how we can do in millions. So this song was called A Million Dreams. So
Wow.
it's worth, and it even I listen weekly once or twice. It inspires me, right, to think big and
Yeah.
aim.
okay. All right. A Million Dreams, and it's off the movie The Greatest Showman. So we will find this, we will listen to it, and we will post it. So,
Great.
Akshay, thank you very much. And we would really like to do a part two to come back. You've educated us, and I'm sure the audience will be educated from listening to what you've been talking about today. And indeed, we have a million and one follow up questions to pick up on, and we'll be doing this if we get another chance to have you on the podcast in the sometime before the end of 2024.
Like, thanks, John. I think it was good because we done so much work on the ground and we won't get a chance to tell these stories, and somewhere from the down south, right, it's somewhere at the
Yeah.
down of India in some corner from a village. So our story, like
Mhm.
if a bunch of, never doubt, some small group of citizens can change the world, right? So we are
Yes,
changing
yes.
our world, which is the small coastal areas, and this will be inspiration to many, right? I think we want
Yeah.
many more entrepreneurs working in this dirty sector to a cleaner sector. So I'm thanking, I'm very happy that I was able to, I got this opportunity to voice my community opinions and tell that there is a possibility. So thanks,
Yeah.
and I think yes, episode 2 is subjected in principle to the audience feedback and how they take it. So but it was great. I met Matt personally, and hope, John, again I'm coming to Europe. Hopefully I will able to meet you in person, and we need to talk a lot on chemical recycling for the local.
We'll make this happen.